came in yet.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the June 8th meeting of the Memphis and Shelby County Land Use Control Board. My name is Mary W. Sharp, and I will be serving as your chairperson today. We will begin this morning's meeting with a roll call. Mr. Ragsdale, would you proceed, please?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Fleming? Here. Mr. McKinnon?
Here.
Mr. Thomas? Here. Mr. Tolles? Here. Ms. Wilbanks?
Here.
Ms. Lyles-Wallace?
Here.
And Chair Sharp.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. I would like to remind you that copies of today's agenda are located in the right podium if you need them. If you wish to be a speaker on any case that is on today's agenda, please fill out an attendance speaker's card located at the front podiums. Once you have filled out the card, please bring it up front and hand it to one of our DPD staff members located at the left podium. When that agenda item is called, you will be given the opportunity to speak. At this point, I would like to read our conflict of interest statement. The adopted policy of the Land Use Control Board requires that any member of the board recuse himself or herself from any participation in the discussion or voting on any matter on the meeting's agenda in which he or she may have direct or indirect personal interest. The member shall vacate his or her seat during deliberation on any matter from which they have recused themselves. An abstention may substitute for a recusal for the purpose of maintaining a quorum. I would now like to get approval for our minutes from the last meeting. May I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against, nay. Motion carries. Mr. Ragsdale, may I please get a secretary's report for this month and an explanation of today's procedures?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a secretary's report, so I'll go into the procedure. At the beginning of today's meeting, we will establish a consent agenda for those items where no one in the audience or on the board is requesting an individual public hearing. After the consent agenda is established and approved, we will move on to the regular agenda. For each case on the regular agenda, the DPD planner will give a presentation. This will be followed by the applicant's presentation and any testimony from others who support the application. The applicant and supporters will be given a total of 10 minutes. Following each speaker, the chair will ask the board members if they have any questions for that speaker. Next, the opposition will be given a total of 10 minutes to present their case. Following each speaker, the chair will ask the board members if they have any questions for that speaker. Finally, the applicant will then have a 3-minute rebuttal period under the same rules. Following all the presentations and after all parties have been heard, the chair will ask if the board members have any additional questions of anyone who spoke. Then the chair will close the public hearing portion of the case, entertain a motion on the matter, discuss, and then vote on the application. If an applicant or any speaker would like to be heard after the conclusion of the public hearing portion of the case, or if a board member wishes to hear any additional testimony from any party for additional clarification, a motion will need to be made along with a second and then a 2/3 affirmative vote of the board is required to reopen the public hearing portion of the agenda item. If the public hearing is reopened, both the applicant and the opposition will be allowed an equal amount of time to provide additional testimony. After the additional comments, the board will close the public hearing portion of the case and deliberate and take the final vote. Again, if any member of the audience wishes to provide testimony in support of or in opposition to a case, he or she will need to fill out a speaker's card. These are available at the front podium. Speaker's cards are not required of applicants since their names are already part of the record.
Thank you, Mr. Ragsdale. The board is a supporter of community involvement, and we welcome neighborhood comments and feedback. We are respectful of the fact that many of you have taken off work or adjusted your schedules to be here today, but we ask that your comments please be made within the time frame allowed. If there are multiple speakers, please try not to be repetitive so as to make the most of your side's 10-minute time allotment. Lastly, I'd like to ask you to all silence your cell phones so as not to interrupt or disturb anyone during today's proceedings. With our procedures now explained, I would like to introduce to my right Ms. Lisa Wilbanks, who will be this morning's consent agenda chairperson. Ms. Wilbanks will read items 1 through 10 as the consent agenda. Once the consent agenda is read, if you wish to discuss one of those items individually, please come forward and give us the item number, and we will pull that case. We will then vote on the remaining consent agenda items as one vote, and following the vote, we will hear the cases that were pulled individually. Ms. Wilbanks, will you proceed, please?
Yes, ma'am. Item number 1, case MJR 23-12 in Raleigh. The request is a hotel at 3620 Austin Peay Highway. Staff recommendation is approval with one condition. Item number 3, case MJR 23-14 has been withdrawn. Item number 5, case S 23-22 in Cordova has been held. Item number 7, case MJR 23-23 in Cordova. The request is a major modification to allow a private club use in the Cordova Grove PD Phase 4 at 8342 Macon Road. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 8, case MJR 23-24 has been held. Item number 10, case S 23-25, has been held. That is our consent agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Wilbanks. Anyone now wishing to pull a case from the consent agenda, please come forward and give us the item number. So far, we have pulled item number 2, 4, 6, and 9. The items on the consent agenda will now be voted on with one vote, subject to the recommendation of the DPD. If the consent agenda is approved, only item number 2, 4, 6, and 9 will have an independent public hearing. By voting on the consent agenda, each board member is affirming that he or she has read the staff report and agrees with its findings and, where applicable, its recommended conditions. Can I get a motion, please?
Yes, ma'am. Move to approve item number 1, case MJR 23-12. Item number 7, case MJR 23-23.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, I hear a second, and we have a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay, I'm now ready to go to our regular agenda, and Mrs. Desiree Lyles Wallace will be our regular agenda chairperson today. Ms. Lyles Wallace.
Good morning. Item number 2, case S 23-16 Sea Isle 2-lot major residential re-subdivision of Lot 10 of the Park Gardens SD at 1190 Hayne Road. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions.
Thank you. We will now have the applicant come up and state your name and address. Then we'll hear the case because there is opposition.
David Bray for the applicant, 2950 Stage Plaza North.
Okay, thank you. We're ready to hear.
Good morning, Board. Jordan McKenzie, staff. This is a 2-lot re-subdivision, S 2023-016. The applicant is Tennessee Redevelopment Partners at 1190 Hayne Road. Just a quick synopsis is in the Sea Isle Park neighborhood. And this is a map of the location as well as a vicinity map. The zoning is R10. It abuts R10 on all sides. And as you see with the land use map, it abuts all residential. These are just a couple of site photos. One is actually looking at the subject property itself along Hayne Road looking east. The other one is a view of the property across the street from subject property looking west. This is the Park Garden subdivision. This is just a plat showing the Park Garden subdivision itself. This is the site plan for the proposed subject property is 2-lot. It will be a flag lot subdivision. This is Memphis 3.0 that shows that it is consistent with the future land use map and the degree of change map. Just a quick conclusion, this is, again, a re-subdivision. The lots do meet the bulk regulations for RS10. The approximate size of the lots is 11,480 square feet and 13,827 square feet. The existing parcel is a legal lot of record, and it is buildable on, although the consistency for the lot configuration is not typical for the neighborhood. It does conform, I cannot talk this morning, with all applicable provisions and requirements of the UDC. So as a result, staff recommends approval with one condition, that a final site plan be submitted for DPD review prior to them submitting for the final plat submission. And I'll take your questions at this time.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of the staff at this time? Okay, hearing none, we're ready for the applicant to present your case. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you. So this project may be familiar to a few of you. You've seen it before. This was approved back in 2020 with a different developer in the configuration that it is in today. Unfortunately, that was back during COVID period, and for whatever reasons, that developer did not go forward and actually record the final plat. So if you go back to that previous approval, we had worked with Y&A to establish some conditions. My applicant at this time, who's here today to answer any questions that you might have, purchased this from the previous developer, thinking that it was 2 lots. As he went forward to get a building permit, discovered that the plat had never been recorded. So we contacted staff here to find out what to do, and the solution was to file a new application. So in the fall of last year, we filed a new application and subsequently had our neighborhood meeting with the neighbors who are here, and several of them I think are planning to speak. At that time, our takeaway from that meeting was that they would be happier if we had 2 lots of equal width instead of a pipe stem configuration. So we withdrew the application. We filed an application with the Board of Adjustment to get a variance to reduce the width so that we could do 2 lots in that configuration. And at the same time refiled this application with 2 lots that were next to each other, not this current configuration that you have up there. We got shot down at the BOA. They did not agree that would be the best solution for this. So we are back to the original version as it was approved in 2020, and that's what we're asking for approval for today. The staff supported it at that time. The staff supports it today. There are some conditions that we worked out with the Neighborhood Association previously. We're amenable to those conditions, including a meeting that we had before the BOA hearing. Once we have an approval and are moving forward, we will submit elevations to their design review committee for approval. We're willing to put that on the plat, that's a requirement. They had asked for a plot plan of how these lots would lay out. We provided that sometime last week. We would like to work with the neighbors to get this approved. Unfortunately, at this point, I don't know that there's any room left to work with them, but we want to be a good neighbor, and regardless of their position, we would still agree to that architectural control by them and any other conditions that the staff feels is relevant to this. And at this time, I'd like to reserve the rest of my time for rebuttal and let them go ahead and speak.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're ready for the opposition. Please give us your name and address before you give us your statement.
Good morning, my name is Jean McInerney, 1361 West Crestwood Drive. Before I start my comments, I'd like to ask my neighbors from the Yorkshire area who are here to oppose the flag lot subdivision to please stand. Everyone opposing the Yorkshire flag lot subdivision, please stand. Thank you very much. In addition to the letter that the Yorkshire Neighborhood Association Design Review Committee submitted to you, our records indicate that a total of 68 households have submitted opposition emails on this case. All of these letters are from property owners. There have been 0 letters in support of this application. If I could please have the Google map up, please. We've prepared a map showing the location of the opposition letters that we're going to pull up on the screen.
Can you send it again? It didn't come through.
Pardon me?
Can you send it again? It didn't come through.
Oh, excuse me just a minute. Could my time be paused while we're sending the email?
What did she say? What did you say?
Could you pause my time while, he asked me to resend my email with the link. Could you pause my time while we do that, please?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Can we go to the next one?
Okay. Thank you.
It's in the staff report if that's easier for you to pull up. Our letter's at the very end of the 118-page version, and I think it's on page 2 or 3 of our letter.
All right, give me a second. It is. That's what I'm going to now.
Madam Chair, we're just going to pull it up from the staff report then. So we should have that up in a second, so.
Yeah, no. This, I believe this is the map.
Okay, thank you. That is as of June the 1st. There were actually some letters that we've added since that time, but the basic concept is the subject site is the yellow star. The icons that are brick red are within 500 feet of the subject site, and the purple icons are residents within YNA boundaries where their home is more than 500 feet away from the subject site. We believe that the distribution of these opposition letters shows you 2 things. Number 1, there's extremely strong opposition to this application from the neighbors who live in the immediate area, that being the brick red icons, as well as opposition from residents who recognize that this case has the potential to set precedent and to destroy some of the characteristics of our neighborhood that we hold so dear. Our other comments about this case are going to focus upon a summary of our association's UDC analysis. While the official staff report concludes that the proposed application is not in character and compatible with the existing development of the neighborhood, it yet proceeds to recommend approval. Please refer to our lot width research. We've provided you with a map and a chart of the lot widths within 500 feet of the subject site. Based on this objective data, that last map should be on the very last page, 118 of the report. Thank you. Based on this objective data, you can see that the proposed lot widths are unusual and disharmonious with the character of the Yorkshire neighborhood. Rather than being a strict application of the regulation, we maintain that a subdivision is a discretionary entitlement. As you look to section 9.7.7H, parentheses 2 of the UDC, when you objectively apply subsection B dealing with size and width of all lots within 500 feet of the proposed subdivision, please reject this discretionary entitlement because the proposed lot widths are not in keeping with the character of the development in our neighborhood. Additionally, we have 2 requests. First, we ask for confirmation that 3 pages that were left out of the staff report are being entered into the public record. And then second, we would ask that the applicant, in his rebuttal comments, make time to address who is the true owner of this property. On the application, it's listed as Tennessee Redevelopment, LLC, which, as of the last time I looked, that did match the tax assessor records. But at the March 20th stakeholders meeting, Mr. Bray's client advised neighbors that the real owner of the property was intended to be an entity by the name of it's intended to be, we were advised, Tennessee Redevelopment Partners, LLC. The significance is the ownership is different between these 2 entities. We've been advised that there are 3 owners in the applicant that you show on the application. There are 2 owners in the Tennessee Redevelopment Partners. We would certainly like to know who we're doing business with. We believe that this property may have been quitclaimed in the correct name. We would like that to be verified if we could. And we do have another speaker from the neighborhood. I want to thank you for your time and consideration of our position. Please vote to reject this subdivision application. And I'm, of course, happy to answer any questions now or after my neighbor, Bob Cremarius, speaks.
Thank you. We have one other that's going to speak.
Yes, yes, ma'am, from the neighborhood.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. How many minutes does he have?
4 minutes, 52 seconds.
Go ahead. We need your name and address.
Good morning. My name is Bob Cremarius. My address is 5390 Sea Isle Road, Memphis 38119. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My wife and I have lived in this neighborhood for over 30 years. What drew us to the neighborhood was the existence of the large treed lots. A flag lot is not consistent with the character of our neighborhood. It not only does not fit within the original plan for the neighborhood, but will detract from the values of the neighboring properties. Additionally, this development would set a precedent for more flag lot developments within the interior of the neighborhood. As mentioned previously, they stated that the neighbors might be willing to support 2 lots side by side. That was never my understanding. At every meeting I've been to, the property is too narrow for 2 side-by-side properties, and our consensus opinion has been for a single-family home on this property. As you can see from the chart on Haney Road, the first home in the front would face the road as all the homes in the neighborhood do, but then there would be another one tucked away in the back facing a different direction, facing the backyard of the home in front of it. And as mentioned, this property was previously approved for a flag lot. You might ask, if it was approved once, why shouldn't we approve it again? Well, the fact is, the answer is, at the time of the original approval, our neighborhood was not organized to examine the suitability of the proposal. Since then, we've had a lot of interest of development in our neighborhood, and we as a neighborhood have become organized in an effort to preserve the character of the neighborhood. As such, we've reached out to the neighbors around the property, and the feedback has been overwhelming opposition, as can be seen by the almost 70 letters included in the staff report, with 0 proponents. It's not that I am opposed to new development. I believe a nicely designed single-family home would be a great addition to the property at 1190 Haney. My wife and I supported the 12-lot development by the Albertine Company, which is directly next door to my property. And the reason is the developer worked with our neighborhood and agreed to maintain the proper zoning and frontage and build in accordance with the character of the neighborhood. In this case, the builder has not provided any elevations or specific development plans provided at any of the neighborhood meetings, and we have consistently stated that what we would like to see is a single-family home consistent with the rest of the neighborhood. The way the homes are configured, it would detract from the value of the neighboring homes and would look ridiculous in our neighborhood. I sincerely hope you will agree that this proposed development is not consistent with the character of our neighborhood, and you will reject this application for a flag lot. Please honor the wishes of the many neighbors who live in this neighborhood, have come out today and have written letters to show opposition for this development. Thank you very much, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions, board members, of either of the opposition speakers? Any questions? Okay, we're ready, Mr. Bray, for your rebuttal.
Kyle Sled, 162 DeBray Creek Circle. Can't remember exactly the 2 questions it was that she asked. I think who the owner? Okay, who the ownership is. Originally, when this property was purchased, it was purchased by my partner in here because he had quicker financing capabilities. The seller wanted to sell it quick, and he had a line of credit he used. So we eventually quick claimed it to Tennessee Redevelop Partners. We are 50% partners in each, in both of that. I am a controlling partner, even though we're financially 50%. I believe we stated that in previous meetings, our entity. There was a clerical error by the closing attorney, or lack of filing error by the closing attorney, and it was recorded finally, after I believe they brought it to my attention, that this year in March or something. I have a copy of it if you'd like to see it. The name of the entity is Tennessee Redevelopment Partners, as I believe the other question. So I intend to build 2 houses. We bought the property thinking that we could just get it recorded. That's the way it was stated to us. Obviously, we're here because it wasn't possible. We had to restart. We didn't really want to do anything different. I can't really state that they said that they wanted 2 lots with the forward-facing. We took, after the meeting, the first original neighborhood meeting, some of their concerns of cutting down trees, et cetera, that we were trying to address to try to make them happy. Unfortunately, it seems like we've had a couple of meetings and they don't really have much to say because they're in pure opposition, which I understand and respect. But we're willing to adhere to architectural guidelines. They didn't want any architectural guidelines on the variance, but in this one, they do want architectural guidelines. So they elected to go that way. I'm willing to do it. It's at my expense. If they've asked me to do with $600 per plan, I'm willing to amend to it. I think we've submitted elevations and a plot plan. I assume you have it in your staff report. So I'm willing to work with them. I understand that they're not in support of it, so I feel like that's the wall we're at this point. Once again, we bought it thinking that we could just get it recorded. We're not asking for anything else that wasn't already previously done. It is our mistake by buying it, obviously, unrecorded and in a quick fashion. So we understand that they're not in support of it, but I was under thinking that it would be a simple recording issue after we purchased it. We are probably a year or so later at this point. So I tried to do a variance to hopefully make some of them happy. It didn't work, and we are here today for that reason. So I'll be glad to answer any other questions.
Jordan, do you have the plot plan that was submitted last week? And while he gets that up, address a couple of the issues. So one of the comments is made that when we originally took this case, the neighborhood wasn't equipped to deal with it, and that's how this got approved. And I would take issue with that because we worked with them. We had specific conditions that were going on the plat, up to and including a change before the night before the Land Use Control Board, where originally, if you go way back to that application, I think it was a 2019 application, the pipe stem was on the southern portion of the lot. And because of concerns about headlights and where that driveway would be located, we flipped it to move the pipe stem to the northern part. But they've said a lot about lot width and it not being compatible, and this setting a precedent. And I want to address that a little bit. First of all, as evidenced by the fact that we went to the Board of Adjustment asking for a variance. The Board of Adjustment did not feel a variance was warranted in this neighborhood. I feel like they would think the same thing again. So this is a uniquely situated lot because not many of the lots in this subdivision are greater than 20,000 square feet. As you saw in the zoning map, everything out there is zoned R10. So we are an R10 lot, or two R10 lots. That lot is greater than 20,000 square feet. This is our plot plan for this configuration, a little different than what Mr. Cremerius put up. You see a driveway on the south side for the front lot, and the driveway coming in the hatch portion for the pipe stem lot, and then a hook-in garage for that one with a front that's not facing the neighbor to the north. We feel like this would be compatible. As you drive down Haney, you're going to see the house on the front. That lot's 80 feet wide. That's not inconsistent with surrounding areas. The pipe stem lot is actually wider once you get past the pipe stem, and that hatched area of the pipe stem, is simply a driveway. So you're going to see an extra driveway as you drive down the street that's not going to a house that's right on the front. But that's really all you're going to see. You're not going to see this other house back behind it. It was our mistake to submit the BOA application and the configuration. What we were hearing was concern for the trees on the back, and the back lot is challenging. It's going to be a lot of work to do. But we do feel like this is workable. We felt like it was workable in 2019 with the previous applicant. We feel like it's workable now. And we feel like this is compatible with the neighborhood. Both these lots, we're not asking for any variances. These lots meet the UDC, and that's why you had a staff report that recommended approval in 2019 and a staff report that recommends approval today. So we don't think this is setting a precedent that's going to damage the neighborhood, and we think it would be consistent. I'll be happy to answer any of the questions you have. And actually, clarify one more thing. We are willing to add an amendment that both of these lots will be subject to the Y&A Design Review Committee, and Mr. Sled will pay for that as a portion of going through. We've been agreeable with that. We did submit elevations to them. We did not move forward with submitting them to their architect. That's the $600 he was referring to, because that was $600 per plan to review. And it was clear that by doing that, we still weren't going to get their support at the BOA meeting. And obviously, these two houses are not the same two houses that we had at that point, because at that time we were trying to fit houses that would fit on a 50-foot wide lot. So we've changed houses, but when we're ready to build on these lots, we will submit through them. That'll be a condition of the plat, and we'll work with staff to get that worked out. I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant?
I do. I just wanted to find out, Worldwide Property Hub, what is the relationship?
So that's my other business partner, and he was the original purchaser that had a line of credit, and then we are a partnership in Tennessee Redevelopment Partners. I'm a managing partner.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, we're going to close the public portion of our meeting. We're ready for the motion.
Motions. Move to approve item 2, case S 23-16 Sea Isle two-lot major residential re-subdivision of Lot 10 of the Park Gardens SD at 1190 Haney Road.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved. We have a second. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote. We're going to vote all together or individually? What do you think?
Madam Chair, if you would like, I can call the roll just to,
Okay, all right.
okay. Mr. Fleming?
No.
Ms. Wilbanks?
No.
Mr. Tolles?
No.
Mr. Thomas?
No.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Ms. Miles Wallace?
No.
Chair Sharp?
No. Okay, motion fails?
Yes.
All right. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you.
Move to approve case number, whatever. On the second time, Okay. I said only read. Oh, Lord. Okay.
30 seconds each.
You got it, you got it. You're the math
I
lady.
got it the last time from Miss Pritchard. This time I got it from her, the instructions on what to do.
Yeah, see, that's what I did last time. Okay.
Okay, we're gonna wait till the council room clears.
5 seconds ago. I'm doing the best I can. Yeah, because I.
Right, item number 4, case SE 23-01, Midtown, special exception to allow 4 stories where not permitted by section 8-4-9, Midtown District Overlay height standards at 34, 40, 42, and 48 South McLean Boulevard. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions.
Thank you. We are ready for your name and address of the applicant, and then we'll hear the case.
Yes, ma'am. Josh Whitehead, Birchporter Johnson, 130 North Court.
Thank you. Ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jeffrey Penzis for the Division of Planning and Development. So this, again, is a special exception to allow a 4-story height within the Midtown overlay. And the updates from last month are the applicant has now submitted these proposed elevations. And then, if you remember, so a special exception for the additional height is actually, it's not the same as a variance. It's basically just, is this contextual with the community? And our staff feels it is contextual because we can see there's 8-story, 5-story, 10-story, 4-story, and 7-story buildings, essentially on all sides of this development. So we do feel that this is an appropriate special exception for the area that it's located. And there has been one change since last month to the conditions. Number 1 now has this extra language with the following exception, the ground floor elevation is not required to be 18 inches above the adjacent sidewalk. And with that, our office is recommending approval with these conditions, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? No questions? Okay, we're ready for the presentation.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Josh Whitehead. As Mr. Penzis warms up our PowerPoint slide deck, I want to introduce our team. Behind me is Ed Apple and Eddie Kircher, the developers of this project, and Cindy Reeves and her team are serving as the consulting engineers. Next slide, please. So the reason we're here is this section of the Midtown overlay, this map. This is the height map that limits the height of buildings built post-2010 when the Midtown overlay was adopted. In green, we have 10-story buildings. In yellow, 6-story buildings. And in orange, the balance of the overlay, we have 3-story buildings. We're in that orange section betwixt two green 10-story sections. Next slide. So when the Midtown overlay and really the UDC were being codified at the same time, I had a conversation with one of the people who were putting that together because I said, hey, I'm interested in serving at the Board of Adjustment. And he said, why the Board of Adjustment? We're removing a lot of their powers, such as height variances, and bestowing them to the Land Use Control Board. I said, why are you doing that? And he said, the UDC, and particularly the Midtown overlay, wants to promote density. And so we don't want to have a inhibition, a prohibition on height, because the variance test is pretty tough. You have to show a hardship, a practical difficulty, a unique circumstance. So he said, we're adopting this special exception language for what used to be height variances to make them a little easier. And so the bulk of my presentation will be taking a look at 914.6 of the UDC and the rules governing special exceptions insofar as height in this case. Number one, the request will not adversely affect any plans to be considered. Next slide, Mr. Penzis. The main general plan that applies here is the Memphis 3.0 plan. We are identified in orange, which is primarily multifamily neighborhood. Our proposal is a multifamily building. Next slide. The main criteria, though, B, C, and D, as Mr. Penzis mentioned, deals with the request not injuring the damage, use, or enjoyment of surrounding property, that will not have an adverse impact on the surrounding property, and that will not materially and adversely affect adjacent land uses. Basically, it should be compatible with the surroundings. Next slide. And Mr. Penzis kind of stole my thunder on this aspect because as we hopscotch around the area, next slide, we'll see, looking north, we have a 5-story building, an 8-story building, and the Gilmore Gardens, 3.5-story building. Next slide. These are what those buildings look like along Madison. Next slide. These are what they look along McLean. In the red star, if you can see on the left, is where our 4-story building is proposed to be. Next slide. Looking south, down McLean, we see a 4-story building, the Citizen. Next slide. Next slide. And of course, it adjoins an old Holiday Inn, which is an 8-story portion of the Citizen. Next slide. And then finally, one block, in our same block between Union and Madison, you have the Rosecrest, which is now called Idlewild 45. It's 10 stories. Next slide. So we think we meet, and this map 1 through 4 in relation to our pink star shows the proximity of those properties to our site. Next slide. Here's another way to look at it. Our block on the east side of McLean, between Madison on the left and Union on the right, shows the relative height of the Gilmore Gardens, and Starbucks on the far right. Gilmore Gardens at 3.5 stories with a mansard roof is about the same height as our flat-roofed 4-story building. Next slide. And finally, this is not the first time this body has looked at this height map. In 2019, it approved a 5-story building in a orange zone, a 3-story zone, up there at Poplar and Tucker. Next slide, across from Overton Park, which is now known as Art Lofts. With that, Madam Chair, I'm going to stop and save the balance of our time for rebuttal.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have 20 people in opposition, which gives you 30 seconds per person. Okay, and give us your name and address.
Hello, my name is Robert Gordon in Central Gardens. I'm on the board of midtownmemphis.org, and I run a monthly planning and development meeting of 18 Midtown neighborhoods. Midtownmemphis.org is an umbrella group for neighborhood associations. We support the Midtown overlay, and we support Memphis 3.0. We believe that Memphis 3.0 applies in this case. Oh, I have these handouts, please. Because as shown on the page 1 of your handout, if 3.0 were encouraging acceleration, this part of McLean would be green, like the areas where expansion is encouraged. The non-applicability in the 3.0 map is important because it's indication of the plan's desire to preserve the status quo. But the Midtown overlay is more important. During our negotiations with DPD for the recent zoning text amendment, Mr. Ragsdale and Mr. Zena confirmed for us what is written in the current UDC and is on page 2 of your handout, which says that an overlay district in conflict with other zoning, the overlay standards shall apply. On pages 3 and 4, you'll see that the Midtown overlay height map is specific down to the individual lots on a street. The height map is very clear that these properties should remain at 3 stories. Some of you may have participated in the creation of the Midtown overlay. I know others in the room have. It's a very recent innovation. These plans are designed as guidance for questions just such as what's before you today. A lot of planning went into the Midtown overlay, and when a seed is planted, it needs time to grow. In addition to our organization opposing, we have representatives from every single historic district on the south side of Midtown, and also one that is in the application process. These are the neighbors who will most regularly encounter this proposed violation of the overlay. We will have brief statements from Central Gardens, Glenview, East End, Roselle Annisdale, Idlewild, Annisdale Park, and Annisdale Snowden, and from the present resident of one of the Centennial buildings slated for demolition. Before they speak, I'd like to ask everyone in the room who supports the Midtown overlay, who supports Memphis 3.0, and who is in opposition to this application and in opposition to changing the Midtown overlay to please stand. Please welcome from the Central Gardens Association, Board Member Mark Fleischer.
What is your name,
morning.
please? Sir, what is your name and your address?
Mark Fleischer, 686 South Mansfield, Central Gardens, 38104.
I couldn't hear your name.
Mark Fleischer.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm here to represent Central Gardens, the Central Gardens Neighborhood Association. It should be noted that we did submit a letter of opposition, but we were too late for the staff report, so we did email a letter to each commissioner. The email would have come from Kate Metcalf. And we also sent in, one of our board members sent in a handwritten paper letter and mailed it to Libby Pritchard, which I notice is not here today. So as a representative of Central Gardens Neighborhood Association, it reads, we as a board express our opposition to the special exception requested by McLean Partners LLC at 34, 40, 42, and 48 South McLean Boulevard. Our opposition is to the 4-story height exception, which is expressly prohibited in the Midtown overlay to the UDC in this space. As a historic district, we value the protections that documents such as these provide to our surrounding community and believe in adhering to a plan and process that has already been agreed upon. It is our feeling that exceptions like the one requested here create opportunities for developers to ignore the very purpose of the Midtown overlay. While allowing this exception will encourage developers to ignore Midtown's aesthetic and the wishes of the people who live here. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I can tell you that all 20 people are not going to get to speak.
Ms. Taylor, Ms. Elise Taylor from Glenview.
Give us your name and address. I did not hear your name.
Good morning. I'm Earlise Taylor from Glenview National Historic District. I live at 1663 Glenview Avenue, 38106. I'm in oppose of what these other people are asking for, but I support my group for keep it at 3 levels, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Give us your name. Let her give the name and address because you're taking time to introduce them.
Good morning, I'm Linda Williams. I live at 990 South Willette. I've lived there since 1970, and I live in the Roselle-Ansdale Historic District. I am here in opposition to the increase in the stories. 3 stories are approved. It's okay with the overlay. I think we need to be consistent, and we need to stand our grounds and enforce what we have approved and decided. We are very interested in the environmental aspect of this property, and we would suggest a courtyard in the front with green spaces, which is in keeping with our Midtown idea of a perfect community. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Michael Berry, B-E-R-R-Y. I'm at 2218 Jefferson Avenue. I'm the president of the East End Neighborhood Association, and we just wanted to voice our opposition to this. We support 3.0. We also oppose the potential demolition of those historic houses nearby. We're all for growth, smart growth. We want it to be underneath the 3.0 umbrella. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning. My name is Catherine Winterburn. I live at 1241 Benton Avenue in Memphis 38104. I've been there for 47 years. I'm a founding member of the Ansdale Park Neighborhood Association, and we have worked frequently with landmarks and land use control, and we also worked on the plans for the Midtown overlay in 3.0. When the city came and asked for input from all the neighborhoods, we all worked together to create the plan. And today in Memphis, we can't get MPD right, we can't get MCS right, we can't get mayoral qualifications right, we can't get a license application right. But today we have the opportunity to get something right, to go forward with the Midtown Overlay Guidelines, which were developed by the City of Memphis to preserve the historic integrity of Midtown. We can get this right. Let's stick to the plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. We got 20 cards up here.
3 minutes.
How many minutes? 3. We have 3 minutes left.
Good morning. My name is Tamiria Tishka, 775 Melrose Street, Midtown. I am a current tenant at 48 South McLean Boulevard. The name of my business is Lucille Huga. We opened our shop August 1st, 2021 during the pandemic in hopes of bringing the community back together. From the number of supporters and audience, I think that it's safe to say that we are on the right path. Yeah. I stand here with those physically here, a petition with nearly 1,500 signatures and the 55 letters that you have opposing the exception of a 4-story. We are aware that if the 4-story is not approved, the owner still plans to demolish the houses and utilize the space to build a 3-story project. We ask that when this time comes, that the city of Memphis please consider saving both houses, relocate them to another space here in Midtown. Memphis, we need your help. I am also positive that many of you agree that a 100-year-old house does not have to be registered as historical to be considered historical in the hearts and minds of the people that reside in Midtown. Last month, someone said that there was no proof that these houses were built on sacred land. I was glad to contact the Chickasaw Nation that occupied the land before 1818. A representative returned my call, gave a huge sigh, and said, "The entire city of Memphis is sacred." Why? Because every part of this land was sacred to us. Everything. Ma'am, I regret that we cannot provide a written statement to help your cause. We no longer own the land. It was sold at a price that our ancestors should have refused long ago. Please know that I am not an enemy or rival to the owner. I am just a concerned Midtowner who happened to have been a current tenant when the new owners purchased the house. Like many others, I've decided to take a stand for something I believe in. Too often, we as a community remain silent or just whisper our concerns to deaf ears, complaining to each other privately. I speak with hope that the owner would consider building something that would still have the Midtown historical flair and character and be the perfect fit for the bustling street of Union and South McLean, making room for commercial leasing opportunities for local businesses as Midtown continues to grow and flourish. I, for one, am interested in being a future tenant. However, I'm sure that now that I've spoken on today, that it may be turned down, but that's okay. I truly want the best for the people of the community, the history of Midtown, and the success of the new owners of this land. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, there's no time remaining for the opposition.
Okay, there's no time remaining for the opposition. So if the board members have any questions of the opposition before we go back to the applicant. Any questions of the opposition at this time? Okay, hearing none, we're ready for the applicant's rebuttal.
Thank you, Josh Whitehead again. I think one important thing to remember is that no zoning regulation is set in stone, but I think that is particularly true for a zoning regulation such as a special exception for one additional floor, where the legislative history of the creation of a special exception was to respond to the fact that height map is parcel by parcel, but the default orange 3-story area was not the focus of that height map. The focus of that height map was Union and Madison to promote additional height of 6 and 10 stories there. Number 2, we are going to meet every other aspect without any special exception requests of the Midtown overlay. The primary thrust of the Midtown overlay was indeed to match the architecture of the center of the city. There are architectural guidelines in the Midtown overlay that you find nowhere else in the zoning ordinance that would apply anywhere else in the city. Next slide, Mr. Penzis. One more. The reason why we're here is twofold. Number one, the conversion of this building that we all know, Parkview at Tucker and Poplar, has been converted to a non-age restricted market. That has resulted in a lot of senior citizens moving away from Midtown. There's reports from the various clubs that are Midtown based that have lost a significant number of membership because their senior members now live in Germantown, Collierville, and beyond, where there are senior facilities. Number two, we have a lot of landmarks districts in Midtown Memphis right now. Next slide. This study was authored by a group called Pro Matura. They specialize in senior living market studies. We hired them, and they have indicated there is a strong market for this use. You are familiar with Mr. Kircher and Mr. Apple. They have been before you many times before. When they come before you and ask for a development, they build it. In fact, Mr. Apple, in addition to the times you've seen him before you, he has developed senior living in the past. Next slide, please. So there's been some discussion about the potential landmarking, if I can use that verb, of these two properties. The Tennessee Code Annotated guides the landmarking or the local historic designation of structures. And here, 137404 of the TCA lists 5 components of that. Number one, the building has made some sort of, is associated with an event of historic significance, or a 2, person of historic significance. 3, it contains a structure or structures that embody the distinctive characteristic of that period of construction. Let's put a pin in that for a second. Number 4, it has yielded or may yield architectural information important to history or prehistory. Or 5, it is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. 1, 2, 4, and 5 do not apply, and I would offer that number 3, while it could apply, number 3 is more often used for our larger neighborhoods where you have huge groups of structures that embody a distinctive characteristic. The city of Memphis does have 2 structure-specific landmarks districts. The Withers Home in West Junction, which is certainly associated with a person of historic significance, and Maxwellton, which is along the old Memphis and Charleston Railroad, east of Sims along Southern Avenue. It too was associated with a person of significance. We don't have a landmarks district this small that fell under item number 3. Next slide, please. And here they are. They certainly are of historic significance, but they stand alone and otherwise are somewhat unremarkable in Midtown. Next slide. I would suggest that preserving these 2 structures after the fact that my clients have spent $1.7 million assembling these properties. Let me repeat that. They've spent $1.7 million slowly assembling these properties for the land. The value is in the land. Right now, they appraise for less than half of that. There is a long-standing policy by the city of Memphis that this area needs density. Going back 101 years ago to the 1922 zoning map, this property was zoned for multifamily. These 2 structures existed. They have lasted the test of time over the last 101 years, although they were zoned for something higher than they were pre-existing non-conformities and have, again, lasted for so long. Next slide. But there was a definite push by the city to try to upzone and try to promote density in this area even that far back. I mentioned the number 2 impetus behind this request is indeed the proliferation of landmarks districts. I live in one, and I'm proud to live in one. I live in Central Gardens, and I think it does a great thing to preserve the integrity of these single-family neighborhoods. But they are largely single-family. And as landmarks districts, they're going to stay single-family forevermore, which places a huge market impetus into that zone, next slide, between
Madam
all those
Chair, the
landmarks
applicant doesn't have any time remaining.
I'm sorry, no, 0 or?
0.
0, okay.
All right. Did you say 0? Okay, all right. Do we have any questions of the applicant at this time? Any questions of the applicant?
I do. What effect does it play to have the 4th story or not? How does that affect the development?
It significantly affects the pro forma of this structure. It would increase our square footage by more than 25% in our rent.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to close the public portion of the meeting. Okay, can I get a motion?
Move to approve item number 4, SE 23-01.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any discussion amongst our board members? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote.
Well, I'll say for myself, pretty conflicted. Community shows up, and Midtown always shows up in a bigger way than most communities that we have here in Shelby County. And that's definitely appallable by you guys as well. Definitely torn between this one. We just had a case that came before us, I think last month, where we were looking at the story height. And I think, that was one of the ones that we, I don't think we approved it, but that has no bearing on this case here. But I guess I'm just kind of speaking for myself here right now. just kind of conflicted in this one. Like the development, definitely love the Midtown community. We'll see. Have a vote.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote. Are we gonna vote as a group, or are we gonna vote one by one?
I can do a roll call if you like.
You want me to? Go ahead. What do you think?
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Mr. Tolles?
No.
Ms. Wilbanks?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
No.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Lyles Wallace?
Yes.
Chair Sharp?
Yes.
5 yeas, 2 noes. Motion carries.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Ready for our next case? Okay. Okay. Ready for number 6. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
You do it anytime I want to. I think a couple of people do that. But, they were pretty.
I went by, I went the long way this morning to go by there, because I went by yesterday. But I didn't notice that it was 2.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they're old, pretty houses, but.
Okay, we're ready.
Item number 6, case MJR 23-21 Cordova, correspondence to SUP 23-01, major modification to eliminate internal circulation on track 6 of Club Center North, final plan at 7999 Club Center Drive. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions.
Okay, would the applicant please come forward? Introduce yourself, and then we're gonna hear it since it's a rejection. Give us your name and address.
Hi, I'm Jim Schumpert with the Reeves Firm, 6800 Poplar Avenue in Memphis.
Thank you. Okay, we're ready for your presentation.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Seth Thomas with the Division of Planning and Development. So this case is located at 7999 Club Center Drive. It's about just short of an acre site in the commercial mixed-use 2 district, and the request is a modification to eliminate the internal circulation requirement of the Club Center North PD. Here's the location of the map within Memphis, Shelby County in Cordova. Here's an aerial of the site. Here's a zoning map. Basically, the majority of the surrounding properties are a mixture of commercial with some multifamily residential to the north. And that's sort of reflected in the land use here. As you can see, the majority of the surrounding sites are commercial with a sort of spattering of multifamily. Here are some site photos of the subject property from the intersection of Germantown Parkway. Here's Club Center Drive facing southeast. Here's the subject property from a neighboring drive facing west. So this is the general plan that's sort of prompting this major modification. So this particular case was approved through a special use permit. This is in relation to a private indoor shooting range. It was approved by the City Council March 21st of 2023. And after receiving the approval and sort of looking through the outline plan conditions, we sort of realized that the internal circulation was required for all of the tracks. And so due to the private nature of the shooting range that was approved by City Council, this is a modification to allow the property owner to not have internal circulation for the private shooting range and to be able to put a fence and a gate along the entrance of the property. So in conclusion, the applicant is seeking a major modification to eliminate internal circulation on track 6. Due to the private nature of the shooting range proposal, the applicant is requesting that the requirement of that internal circulation be removed for security, and staff feels that this doesn't really have any substantial undue adverse effect on the adjacent property owners, and we are recommending approval with changes to the outline plan conditions. Just for note, a friendly amendment, in my staff report, I put internal circulation shall be provided between phases, section, lots, and then a period. Lot 6 is not subject to internal circulation requirements. We just want to make a friendly amendment to say tract 6 as the outline plan conditions, and the general plan refers to the separate properties as tracts as opposed to lots. So that concludes my presentation. I'm open for any questions.
Thank you. We have any questions for Mr. Thomas? Hearing none, we're ready for your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. It was a very good presentation, and I really don't have a lot to add. I would like to point out that the property owner to the east, Raleigh Tire, has not built a shared curb cut with this tract, which eliminates the convenient cross-access to that lot right away. And again, this is a private club for use only by its members, and they would like to eliminate the cross-access in order to possibly in the future fence and gate the property.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the applicant at this time before we hear the opposition? Okay, we're ready to hear the opposition. Give us your name and address and your statement, please.
Mary Ann Sawyer, and I'm the owner of 7945 Club Center Drive. I'm very much opposed to this on all levels. I'm not sure you're aware that y'all are approving a gun range right next to a daycare center, the YMCA, a bowling center, and the Cordova skating rink. I have at the bowling center already almost 5,000 children signed up for Kids Bowl Free and over 300 family passes, good for up to 2 to 4 adults to come. With the problems that all cities have, I have a hard time believing that y'all would want a gun range right next door to where your children or grandchildren may go to daycare, much less the family nature of that subdivision, of that area. I do know that some people were not even aware of the meeting in March. I've talked to the skating rink owner. He was not even aware of this meeting until I told him. I think he was planning to come. I haven't seen him. We're also surrounded by 2 huge apartment complexes. It may be a private club, which also means there's probably going to be some more expensive cars there, regardless of what they say. They've already amended things. The original plans were for 2 shooting lanes. Now it's up to 8. People are going to find out there's going to be a target for car break-ins, which are all over the city, as well as people, regardless of what they do, are going to find out that these people have guns with them. And it's going to make them even more of a target. We do not need this around family-oriented places. There's a gun range just a few miles away, right off of Whitten Road. I'm totally opposed to guns being anywhere around where there are going to be a lot of children. Do I have any questions?
Any questions of the opposition?
Before you vote, please think if you want your children or grandchildren at daycares or at family-oriented places right next to a gun range. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, applicant, we're ready for your rebuttal.
Yes, thank you. First of all, we're not approving this gun range. It's already been approved. It was approved for 2 shooting lanes, and it will be built with 2 shooting lanes. It has not been increased to 8. We have just a limited number of parking places, as you'll notice on the site plan, because there will never be many people at this shooting range at one time. And these are responsible gun owners, and the intent of this private shooting range is for it to, as much as possible, go away from the public. They won't even notice that it's there.
Okay, thank you. Have any questions of the applicant? Okay, hearing none, we're going to close the public portion of our meeting agenda, and we're going to have a motion.
Move to approve item 6, case MJR 23-21.
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you.
Item number 9, case PD 23-09, Frazier, new plan development and outline plan conditions to allow the expansion of an existing pawn shop at 3337 Overton Crossing Street. Staff recommendation is rejection.
Is the applicant present? And we do have opposition. Applicant, if you would give us your name and address, and then we'll hear the case since it's a rejection, and then we'll hear.
Cindy Reeves, SR Consulting, 5909 Shelby Oaks Drive, Suite 200.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seth Thomas.
Good afternoon again, Seth Thomas at the Division of Planning and Development. This case is, oh geez, what's going on? Here we go. PD 2023-09. It's a new plan development and outline plan conditions to allow the expansion of an existing legal non-conforming pawn shop in the commercial mixed-use 1 zoning district. Just for some background, this case was originally filed as a Board of Adjustment case, and after consideration by the applicant, they felt that it would probably be best to convert the application into a PD, as maybe they were not reaching the undue hardship qualifications for a Board of Adjustment use variance to be approved. So just some background information, at least in terms of the surrounding properties. The existing zoning is commercial mixed use 1, and the surrounding uses are commercial and with some single family residential to the east and west. And that can be reflected here in the land use map. There's also a school across the street. This is the survey that was provided of the site as it currently exists, right on the corner of Overton Crossing and Fraser Boulevard. Here are some site photos of the subject property from Overton Crossing Street looking west. Here's one from sort of the corner facing southwest. And then this is the view of the proposed expansion area as part of this application. This is the proposed front elevation that was provided by the applicant. And here's a site plan where you can see that storage, that 2,000 square foot storage addition being added to the northern side of the property. They've also provided a landscape plan with some additional trees and landscape frontage. And here are the comparative site plans showing what the site looks like now in comparison to what their proposed expansion will look like. And this is that same thing, just the elevations. And so the Memphis 3.0 has given this area a anchor neighborhood Main Street allocation in the accelerate degree of change area. And the skinny of it, I guess, is this is not consistent with the Memphis 3.0 plan, as it does not align with the vision and desired actions for the Fraser Plaza anchor, which focuses on pedestrian-friendly commercial development. The 3.0 staff feels that this does not meet those qualifications. So in conclusion, the applicant's requesting a new plan development to allow for the expansion of a legal non-conforming pawn shop. The applicant intends to convert the site into a new prototype building, and the proposed outline plan conditions will remove the building's legal non-conforming status and bring other aspects of the site into conformity with the Unified Development Code. Staff feels that this proposed development will unduly injure and damage the use, value, and enjoyment of the surrounding properties. And as a result, we are recommending rejection. However, if approved, the following outline plan conditions will be over top of the site. That concludes my presentation. I'm open for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Any questions of him right now? Okay, we're ready for your presentation.
Okay. This slide, of course, you've already seen it. This is the existing site. This is the proposed. The expansion is nothing but a 2,000 square foot storage area. There is another pawn shop that they own on Fraser Boulevard that is owned by the school, and their lease is now up. And so they're going to move their merchandise from that store to this store and make the expansion. As you can see, it needs a facelift. The architects have assured me that this is not going to extend the life of this building, that all that they're doing is expanding the parapet in order to hide the roof. They're going to put a thin coat of wainscot, and there's no structural needs for this building. It's structurally sound, so they're not going to be extending the life of it. We feel that the facelift will increase the values of properties in the area. Pawn shops are not like your payday loans. Pawn shops are a 30-day short-term loan, and you come back and you pick up your merchandise. You have seen, next slide, you've seen the landscape plan. Next slide. The existing site, you can tell it needs a facelift. We feel that it will increase the values. We are across the street from the school. The pawn shop was there before the school was there, and we feel that we've been a good neighbor. We have not had any complaints. The next slide. This is the facility that the school owns that will be closed, that they're going to move the merchandise from there to this building. Next slide. This is the nearest pawn shops that will be available to serve the community in the neighborhood, the Fraser neighborhood. One is 5.6 miles away, which is on Austin Peay Highway. There's another one on Poplar Avenue, which is 6.3 miles, and another on Jackson Avenue that's 6.8 miles. So we feel that this area is not saturated by pawn shops. Next slide, next slide, next slide. Cash America Pawn, next slide. Cash America Pawn is a $1 billion publicly traded company with over 2,800 retail pawn locations. They are not just they don't make up their own rules. They're corporate. They have values. They have rules that they go by. Next slide. They've been in Memphis for over 25 years with 16 shops in Memphis and 49 shops in Tennessee. This store, even with the expansion, will be the third smallest store that they have in Memphis to serve the Fraser community. They are a leading operator of pawn shops. Next slide. The enhancements that they are making is to redesign the exterior and interior to add a retail presence, which right now it is extremely crowded. They feel that they do provide a need for the neighborhood. There's no financial underwriting or credit checks required for a pawn transaction. A customer simply provides an item of value as collateral. There are no financial ramifications associated with not paying. Repayment is elective. If a customer repays, they receive back their collateral. If they do not repay, the pawn shop retains the item. I'm going to save the rest of my time for rebuttal. I do want to also point out that when we had the pandemic, pawn shops were considered an essential business, and they were able to stay open according to Governor Lee. So we feel that it is an essential business, but I'm going to save the rest of my time for rebuttal.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions of her right now? Okay, hearing none, we're ready for the opposition. We have one card.
Good afternoon. Anthony Anderson, 9490 Grove Trail Lane. I am a founder and the CEO of a charter school network in Memphis, Tennessee. The Memphis Business Academy charter schools. We have 5 of those schools. And then we also have the Memphis STEM Academy, which is our 6th school. We've been blessed to create charter school opportunities for children at risk, primarily Black and brown children. 23 years ago, when I desired to create these schools, we wanted to focus on business, financial literacy, entrepreneurship, building wealth, smart financial management. 13 years ago, we were blessed to buy a blighted, closed down Kmart on Overton Crossing, across the street from this pawn shop. At that time, it had been up for sale for 7 years. No one wanted to buy it. We were blessed to buy that building, and we put some $3 million into that building to make it a school, middle school, and a high school. 4 years later, we worked with Self Tucker, a Black architectural firm in this city, to build on that campus a $4 million gym with classrooms, science, chemical engineering, all type of opportunities for children. We put that campus on that building we put that building on that campus as well. 5 years ago, we bought a blighted shopping center on Frazier Boulevard, which their store is a part of that campus. We invested $14 million after buying that property. The total project on Frazier Boulevard, we spent over $16 million renovating that campus, and we put a STEM school into that campus, a K-5 STEM school. That STEM school last year was the top performing charter school out of 80 charter schools in Shelby County. It was #1 in Frazier, teaching children how to be engineers, how to be entrepreneurs, coding, cybersecurity. We've invested over $27 million in that corridor. We are presently working on an athletic complex that is costing us $4 million. Frazier does not have an athletic field where Black and brown children can play soccer or football. They don't have that. We are in the process of developing that. When that is finished on that corridor, we will have invested $29 to $30 million. We're in opposition of a pawn shop, a payday loan. Frazier does not have a shortage of those opportunities for families. They say that they are in the banking business. Let's put a real bank across the street from the largest school in Frazier. We have 1,000 students in that campus. It breaks my heart to have to come here one more time to defend a pawn shop from going across one of the largest schools in Fraser, where we are teaching children how to manage their money, families, how to make good financial decisions. This gentleman here, the last time I spoke, said that perhaps you don't have a personal experience with pawn shops. I grew up in the south side of Chicago, 38th and Ellis. I went to Wendell Phillips where I failed and had to be sent to Mississippi. I remember my mother going to pawn shops. When we ran out of food, her welfare check, she spent her money, she would take her television, our television, to the pawn shop 5 days before her welfare check would arrive. She would get $25 for the television. The welfare check would come in. She would cash the welfare check. As children, we wanted our television back. She would have to go back and pay $50 for that television, 100% increase. We were broke again. I'm asking this board. We've helped the economic development in Fraser in that corridor. I'm asking this board to deny this development. We are forcing real development in that corridor. We've been here multiple times. We brought residents. This keeps coming up. This is summertime for us. My staff is all over the place. Please deny this development. Force them to build a bank, something positive. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of the opposition? Do we have any questions of Mr. Anderson? Okay, hearing none, we're ready for your rebuttal.
Thank you, Ms. Sharp, Chairman Sharp. As staff has said, we filed this as a Board of Adjustment for an expansion of a non-conforming use. Staff decided that it was not, it could not go as an expansion of a non-conforming use, that it had to go as a use variance. We felt that the use variance would be better served under a planned development. The conditions that we're proposing do not allow them to sell guns or ammunition. Their hours of operation are 10 o'clock to 6 o'clock, and they are closed on Sundays. Customers usually cannot get short-term loans from a bank. They can get them from a pawn shop. The nearest pawn shop that will be able to serve them is over 5 miles away. We're wanting to add value and make an investment in this area also. We feel these improvements will do that. The pawn shops provide a necessary service. The stores are critical sources of short-term cash for cash and credit constrained customers. As noted in our variance application, Cash America's proposed expansion and renovations will improve the safety, accessibility, and aesthetics of the property and benefit the community by bringing new job opportunities and creating additional retail activity in the neighborhood. And this will provide a much more orderly shop for them to go in. And it's not, the addition, the 2,000 square foot addition is not for retail. It is only for storage. And we feel that it's beneficial in order to make these improvements and put this investment in the area also. So I would really appreciate your support on this, and I'm available for any questions.
Yes, I have one question.
Yes.
All right, it's an existing pawn shop. Am
Yes,
I correct?
sir.
Okay, and if you do not get this approval, it still operates as a pawn shop. Is that
Correct, and it still remains in the condition that it is in today.
Okay, thank you.
We feel our improvements are a much needed.
Any more questions of either the opposition or the applicant? Any more questions? Well, hearing none, we're going to close the public portion of this meeting. Can I get a motion?
Motion to approve item 9, case PD 23-09. The staff recommendation is rejection.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any discussion? Yes.
I've realized that I need to abstain from this. In order to keep a quorum, I'm going to abstain, not recuse myself, but abstain
Okay.
from voting.
All right. Anybody else? Any discussion? Okay, I assume we're ready to vote? We'll take an individual vote.
Mr. Thomas? Ms. Wilbanks?
Yes.
Mr. Tolles?
Yes.
Ms. Lyles Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon?
No.
Chair Sharp?
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4 yes, and 2 no. Motion carries.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Just show me abstained on the voting record, please.
I did.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fleming.
Okay. Is there anything else? Anything else?
No, ma'am.
Nothing? Okay. Well, we will cheerfully adjourn this meeting.